Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 193, The Power of Nutrition, How What You Eat Impacts Your Health and Well-Being. Well, welcome back as we finish out our month all about self-care, including caring for our bodies and our overall well-being. If you tuned in last week, you were introduced to my dear friend and colleague, Michelle Buckingham, who is a registered dietitian and wellness coach. She specializes in simplifying all this information and making it easy for us to apply it in the real world in our own lives. Michelle helps everyone from people with diabetes and high cholesterol to folks who simply want to stay well. As a registered licensed dietitian nutritionist with over 23 years experience, she's been doing this a long time, she loves helping folks regain the joy of eating and wellness in the context of their everyday lives. Okay, so like we got into last week, confusing nutrition and wellness information can make feeding yourself properly seem like an overwhelming task. And it's one of Michelle's gifts to simplify the whole thing. So here are some things that Michelle's clients love to have her help with: personalized meal planning, one-on-one counseling, wellness resources and referrals, lifestyle management, and medical nutrition therapy. I want to repeat from last week that over the many years I've known her and seeing the success she has had, helping people get healthier, lose weight, and to begin to feel so much better about themselves, I'm so tickled to have her back here to finish part 2 of our wellness conversation. If you missed last week's episode, make sure you have a listen because there is some really good stuff in there too. So today we finish our conversation, and I love just listening and learning from her, and I hope you do too. Make sure you check out her Facebook page. Even if you're not in need of wellness coaching, pass it along to someone who could benefit. Her info is all going to be in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. All right, so let's get to it. Once again, here's Michelle Buckingham. So welcome back, Michelle. It's great to have you back. That was such a great conversation we had last week. That was fabulous. So for folks who haven't had a chance to listen to that episode yet, do you want to kind of recap what we were getting into?
Sure. We talked about a few things, but we kind of focused on diet and nutrition and weight loss. And we made a couple of big points. One is that pretty much all weight loss diets out there, no matter what they're called, are about 1,500 calories, which is what it's a weight loss amount for most people. So there's nothing special about any of them, but they want to sound special because they want you to pick them and tell you their stuff. But you can do the same thing by just looking at the calories in the specific foods you eat on a day-to-day basis and cutting back either the portion size or the frequency or the style of the food to a lower calorie version. And all of those will help reduce calories, which will help you lose weight. That stress management's a big part of it because our brain tells us to eat when we're stressed, and stress hormones can cause us to gain weight, and especially in our abdomen. So stress management, in whatever form, we talked a lot about deep breathing, but in whatever form can really help with weight management, and as can getting enough sleep. At least 7 hours in a row of high quality sleep is necessary for all kinds of health reasons, including weight management, because of the way that 7 hours of sleep affects our brain and the way it changes our metabolism and the hormones that tell us to eat and tell us that we're full and so on. Anything I missed, Mary? Anything you can think of that?
No.
Yep, that's a pretty decent recap, I think.
And that's a good segue into one of the other big questions, because we've been talking about things that people bring to you the most, right? And stuff that I hear too from my clients all the time, because more than likely when people are working on themselves, they're going to talk about their physical health as well. And so a big thing that you and I have been talking about lately is, nutrition in terms of nutrients, right? And vitamins and minerals and things that our body needs. And I encourage clients, and I think other providers are encouraging clients, that before you go for psychotropic meds or before you do anything, let's look at your nutrition. Where are you? Where's your vitamin D? Where's your magnesium? Where's your B vitamins in terms of your energy level? And just really looking at that nutritionally first. And it's becoming, I think, more mainstream to do that anyway. I don't think it's just me, because, I'm listening to what my clients are saying too. And I think it's a great idea. I think it's good to look at that first instead of going for the fix. Like you were talking last week about the guy, with the reflux, to look at where our nutrition is. And, supplements are a big industry and all of that, but you want to talk a little bit about that. Like, how is it best how to find out where we're deficient, and then what should we do next?
Sure. It is uncommon in the United States, where food is so abundant and a variety of food is so easy to get, to have actual nutritional deficiencies unless something else is going on. So that something else might be that you're skipping breakfast and having a nutritional shake for lunch and a bowl of cereal for dinner. So not only are you not getting a balanced diet, but you're missing out on a whole bunch of nutrients you should be getting from food. That can play into it. Also, some medications that people take routinely can interfere with your ability to absorb certain components from food. So, for example, metformin is a real common medication for people with diabetes, but if you take it more than 3 years, because of the way it works, it can interfere with your ability to absorb vitamin B12 from your diet, and you can have a B12 deficiency. Or people who habitually take antacids, especially prescription antacids, that reduces stomach acid, but stomach acid is necessary to extract things like calcium from food. So you can have, it's possible you need a supplement or just need to look at your calcium intake and make sure you're getting enough from food. Those are just some examples of where nutritional needs may require a supplement. But for most of us, it's just balancing our diet out. And in a little bit, we can talk about what that means. But paying more attention, being more mindful, are we getting what we need from the food that we eat? Are we giving our body what it needs? If somebody comes into me and their diet is just woefully inadequate, maybe they're getting enough calories, but they're missing out on, they don't eat any vegetables or they don't eat any fruit and so on, I might suggest they take an over-the-counter low-level multivitamin just in case while they're shoring up their diet. And then once their diet is adequate, they probably don't need it anymore. If you want, we can jump into the whole issue of supplements as a thing. We can talk more about how to balance your diet, just whatever direction you want to go in, we'll go there now.
Well, both sound good.
Well, I mean, since we sort of started talking about supplements, let's just go there for a little bit. A couple things to remember. One is that most of the components of food that are found in supplements are best used when consumed in the food itself.
Right.
I don't know if you remember, there was a study that led to us being told by health officials that if you are a smoker, you should not take B12 supplements, or a former smoker. That was only for the supplements. So I think the thinking was it B12? I'm doubting myself that was the component, but I'm pretty sure it was B12. The reason for the study was it was found that people who got B12 in their diets did not have lung cancer at the same rate as people who had inadequate amounts of B12 in their diet. So they thought, well, let's do a study and give people B12 and see what happens. When you took the B12 out of the food, it behaved differently and made people with a history of smoking more susceptible to lung cancer.
Oh, wow.
So when you take a component and isolate it, same thing with soy. There's sort of a rumor going around that you shouldn't take soy if you're worried about breast cancer, but it isn't soy that's the problem. It's the isoflavone that's extracted from soy when taken all by itself that's the problem. And I tell people, if it was true, then everybody in Japan would have breast cancer because they eat a lot of soy.
Right.
Soy products.
Right.
But no, in the food, it's not a problem. But when you extract it from the food and you feed it to people alone, it behaves differently. And that's the case with just about every component you can think of. Probably the only exception is vitamin D. And that's because it really isn't in very many foods. We historically got it from sun exposure. But if you wear sunscreen, which I hope you do, or you wear long sleeves when you go out, or you have pigment to your skin, it's harder for your body to make vitamin D from sun exposure. And you don't want a lot of sun exposure because that predisposes you to skin cancer. So finding out if you're vitamin D deficient, taking a vitamin D supplement, that's a whole, and that's probably because vitamin D is actually more a hormone than it is a vitamin
Right.
in that category, but it's real different. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
And another thing to think about, well, we kind of touched on this, but vitamins and minerals taken in unnatural quantities can behave more like medication. So if you think, well, this is natural, it's not behaving like a natural compound often in taken in large quantities. And that leads me to the next issue, which is that there is no regulation of the supplement industry. I can tell you a vitamin or a mineral in an amount that could harm you, but nobody's looking over my shoulder to tell me not to.
Right.
Nobody is testing them before they're put on the market to make sure that they're safe. Nobody is testing them to make sure they have what they say they have in them. A lot of supplements, because it's cheaper, are manufactured overseas where there's very little oversight, and often they're contaminated with things you don't want to consume, like lead and sometimes actual drugs. So it's just, you have to be a detective, and you have to do your own research from organizations that don't have a stake in whether you buy the supplement or not.
Right.
And for that reason, I very infrequently recommend supplements because I'm afraid for my patients, about what they're getting. And again, a supplement's not going to be pulled off the market unless enough doctors and people report harm from it. And even then, typically the supplement manufacturer gets a slap on the wrist and, has already made their millions and no big deal. So there's not a whole lot of incentive to produce a quality product. If you want to try to get more information from unbiased sources, the National Institute of Health has a institute, I believe it's called Complementary and Alternative Medicine. They list in alphabetical order all the supplements that they know of out there. They tell you what is claimed, they tell you what is known, and give you some pros and cons. And I believe there's a bottom line to at least allow you to be informed. What they can't tell you is the quality of the supplement that you are thinking of taking. And there is a website called quality-supplements.org, and they tell you which supplements have the USP or US Pharmacopoeia seal, which only tells you whether what you want to take has what it says it has in it. It doesn't tell you whether it will help you or not. Supplements can call themselves supplements and not drugs, even if they have hormones in them, as long as they don't make direct health claims.
Right.
So they often use the term support. So they won't say this will cure your kidney disease. They will say supports kidney health, because legally they can say that even if the ingredients could harm your kidneys. But they know that consumers are going to read that and think this is good for kidney problems, right?
Yeah.
It says it supports kidney health. So basically what I'm saying is it's snake oil days out there, and you just have to be so careful that you don't hurt yourself or pay a whole lot of money for something that's not going to help you and could hurt you. You just have to be the savviest of consumers to make sure that the supplements that you're taking are helping you, not hurting you. No, I was just going to say, tell me what questions you have.
So then how do I know I'm getting enough from my foods? Can you give a brief overview? How do I know I'm doing that through the week?
Yeah, that's a very good question. My go-to is myplate.gov, which has the most updated information on what humans need to eat based on food groups. But typically speaking, if you're getting some combination of at least 5 fruits or vegetables a day, if you're getting at least 6 ounces of lean protein, and we don't need as much protein as we think we need, because we can manufacture the protein that we need from ourselves. We just need a few components for protein to build amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein that we can't manufacture. So we need a lot less protein than is promoted by a lot of food manufacturers. For most of us, unless we're really active and really big, that's about 6 ounces of lean protein a day. We need about 6 servings from the grain group, but a serving is pretty small. So a third of a cup of rice is 1 serving from the grain group, meaning if you eat a cup of rice, you got half all your grain group servings right there, right? So
Oh, wow.
6 sounds like a lot till you look at the serving sizes. And let's see, what am I missing? Oh, we need calcium from some source. It doesn't have to be cow's milk, but that's a quick and easy way to get calcium. And most adults need about 2 servings of high calcium foods a day. Calcium does a lot of good stuff, including help regulate blood pressure. So you don't want to skimp out, but if you prefer not to use animal products, just get a food fortified in calcium, like a soy milk or a rice milk. Well, actually, I wouldn't pick rice milk. I'd pick soy milk. Its profile is very similar to cow's milk, but remember that milk alternatives do not have to add calcium to their products. They usually do, but they don't have to. So check that. It should have vitamin D in it because we can't absorb calcium very well in the absence of vitamin D.
Right.
And they tend to use a pretty cheap form of calcium that is harder to absorb and settles out easier than the calcium in dairy products. So shake it real good and know that, it may say that you're getting 500 milligrams of calcium for 8 ounces, but your body may not actually be absorbing that much. If I could throw something in about calcium supplements here.
Please do.
Yeah, so a number of people take them. Either they don't like any dairy or non-dairy products with calcium, or for some reason they've been told they need a calcium supplement. Calcium always comes stuck to something else in food. And how well you can use that calcium depends on how easy it is for your body to break the bond between the calcium and whatever it's stuck to. And so the easier it is to break that bond, the more of that calcium you'll be able to use. So, some people use Tums as a calcium source, I should say. That's calcium carbonate, and it's kind of hard to break that calcium bond. But it's cheap. So to overcome that, you want to take that calcium with food, because then the stomach acid you produce when you eat will help you break that calcium carbon bond and use that calcium better. No matter what form of calcium you take, your body can't absorb more than about 500 milligrams at a time. So you want to split that dose up over the day. And calcium is a mineral, and minerals are kind of big, and they compete for each other in your stomach. So if you're also taking an iron supplement, don't take it at the same time because they'll compete with each other. But calcium citrate is the easiest to use. So it's so easy to use, you don't have to take it with food. It's just real easy for your body to chop that citrate off and use that calcium. So it's more expensive, but it's also easier for your body to use. So, if you can afford it and you need a calcium supplement, calcium citrate's your best choice. Everything you wanted to know and more about calcium supplements.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think a lot of people are wondering about that. So that's some really good information to know.
Yeah.
So what about the diets out there like vegan, keto, paleo, plant-based, pescatarian, etc.? I mean, what are some of the pros and cons of those, and what do you want to say about that?
So the takeaway for everybody should be it's the pattern of food consumption over time that matters. Vegan diets, you can eat a vegan diet. It's pretty hard to do. You have to be. It's not that you can't. You can absolutely do it, but it takes a lot of thought and a lot of time. And so if you're committed, for sure, there's a great resource if you want to eat a vegan diet. It's called brg.org. That's for Vegetarian Resource Group. And they're actually out of Baltimore, and they were founded by a bunch of dietitians who were vegans, one of whom was one of my teaching assistants when I was in college.
Oh, wow.
But it's become the go-to organization for people who want to eat vegetarian and vegan diets. And they have good recommendations on what to look out for, recipes, how to raise children if you want to raise a child with a vegan lifestyle. it's certainly healthy, but it is a challenge. So you want to be sure you're ready for it. You know, you can't do a vegan diet by eating McDonald's French fries all day and stay healthy. Other diets, it depends on the diet. You know, I've seen some pretty challenging outcomes from people who followed a keto diet for very long if they followed it as prescribed, because it's a lot of animal fat and it tends to drive your cholesterol levels up. So, you know, most of these diets have a component of restriction, right? The vegan diet, you don't eat any animal products. The keto diet, you avoid carbohydrates. The paleo diet, supposedly like our ancestors did, but I always tell people, you know, if you lived in those times, you'd probably die at 30. So, you know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's a diet you want to follow. Plus, we don't really know. It's all guessing. Yeah. And just because people ate it doesn't mean it's what we're supposed to eat. It's what they had available. So, you know, it's just another way to sell, you know, a book and stuff, food. Plant-based, I will have people tell me that they're trying to follow a plant-based diet. And when I ask them what that means, they have zero idea. So
what is that really?
all it means is that you're trying to include more plant products in your diet. And that's great. Plants contain a lot of protective compounds that you can't get in other foods. And so, yeah, do it. But of course, it's become an industry. I recently saw a margarine that called itself plant-based. And margarine's made from vegetable oil. I mean, come on, you guys.
That's funny.
You used to see like vegetable oil that said no cholesterol, which is vegetable oil never had cholesterol in it because you have to have a liver to produce cholesterol. And vegetables don't have livers. So that's been outlawed. So I'm assuming at some point there'll be a legislation that says that, you know, if it's always been from plants, can you call it plant-based? I don't know. But it's just a selling point right now. You know, you can buy all kinds of highly processed junk that it says plant-based because it's got, I don't know, beans in it or something, but it's still not healthy for you. So it's become a buzzword. It was a great movement at the beginning, but like everything else, it got commercialized. And manufacturers are counting on us not having time. And so flashing plant-based on the front of something means that we're likely to pick it up and put it in our basket without really looking at it. So you have to just pay attention to what might be going on in the mind of the manufacturer and try not to be sold a bill of goods and, you know, actually look at the ingredients or the label and see what you're actually getting. And don't use healthy, natural, plant-based, those buzzwords as a reason to buy, you know, a particular food.
Right.
You can call ice cream all natural and that doesn't make it healthy.
Exactly.
So, but having said that, incorporating more whole plants, eating more vegetables, eating more fruit, choosing whole grains more often, you can't go wrong. That will absolutely help lead you in the direction of better health.
If you're eating healthier, you're probably going to maintain a healthier weight.
You're going to be healthier in every way. The healthier you eat, the better every cell in your body works. And so, you know, your blood pressure can go down, your blood sugar can go down, your cholesterol can go down, and you have more energy and just feel better, tend to sleep better. Everything tends to improve when we take better care of ourselves. Isn't that crazy? But I mentioned overall dietary pattern. You want to be sure that whatever dietary pattern you follow, it doesn't exclude an entire category of foods, like the keto diet, which excludes carbohydrates.
Right.
So if it's exclusionary, you're going to feel deprived, but you're also going to be depriving your body of nutrients and food components you can't get from other categories of food, and that can't be good for you, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So a pattern high in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins is great. And if you want a dietary pattern that somebody's already figured out just to use as a pattern for yourself, the two most highly regarded are the Mediterranean diet, which is a pattern. So there's no, you know, huge consensus, but it has certain components like beans and fish and olive oil. You know, there's not a lot of butter or cheese, Mediterranean diet. And the other is something called the DASH diet, which is a dietary pattern that was developed to see if it could lower blood pressure as well as medication? And the answer was yes, but it's also when diets are compared as far as, healthfulness goes, the DASH diet and Mediterranean diet, they usually come out on top if you want a dietary pattern to follow. And, as we talked about, I like to simplify everything. There's something called the plate method, and I'm sure you've seen it before. It's how to fill your plate at lunch and dinner for everything you can think of. It helps with weight management, it helps with blood pressure, it helps with blood sugar, it helps you feel nice and full, and it gives you the things you need from the food you eat, where half of your plate is vegetables that aren't starchy. The starchy ones are potatoes, corn, cooked dried beans, peas. They don't go in that section of your plate. So half of your plate is vegetables, a quarter of your plate is lean protein like skinless chicken we talked about, and a quarter of your plate is starch. So that might be potatoes or peas or corn, or it might be a combination of those foods, but it still is going to make up about a quarter of your plate. And for most people, you already eat that way, just maybe don't distribute your food that way. So moving towards distributing your food that way means you're not on a diet. You're just changing, you're just messing around a little bit with the way you build your meals.
Right.
That's a lot more doable than trying to follow anybody's dietary pattern that they've decided works, because this is the basis of those dietary patterns.
Right. Wow, that's good to know. That's easy to remember and easy to implement. And even if you fall off of that for a little bit, you can get back to it.
We want to get away from the superfood idea. I always cringe when I see a list of the top 5 superfoods or the top 10 superfoods. Because, they certainly have ingredients that are important to you, but they aren't everything. So, broccoli gives you something that carrots don't, and carrots give you something that cherries don't, and cherries gives you something that avocados don't. And, so humans are kind of geared. We want the thing. We want the one thing that if we do that, we'll live a long and healthy life. And, of course, everybody wishes there was a one thing, our fountain of youth. But it is, time and time again, when you look at studies, they show that it isn't one thing. It's a pattern of behavior that leads to good health and, longevity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so if we understand that just being more mindful of having more variety of foods, which is what you're talking about, which is what we've been told, this isn't anything new, and to really do that. I mean, I think it's harder for people who are picky eaters and people who have food allergies and things like that. So I think working with you, you could help them find ways for substitutes and other things that they can eat, if they have problems with dairy or if they're allergic to certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. And also expanding the palate. I've talked to people who never were given vegetables when they were growing up, so they don't eat them. And so we talk about, trying them, just trying something. It's okay to not like it. It's almost like you would do with a child with a food aversion. First you put it on your plate, but you don't eat it. And then you put it on your plate and you smell it. And then you put it on your plate and you touch it with your tongue. And then you put it on your plate and you take a little nibble. And I've worked with a couple of adults who've learned to eat vegetables that way. A good dietitian will take into account who you are and what you do, and then what changes you'd like to make, and then help you along that way.
Okay, thank you. So what if I have a really strong family history of either like diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure? How do I avoid getting one of these illnesses? What are some things I can do in a preventative fashion? Or maybe I've just come back from the doctors and I'm told that I'm pre-diabetic or my blood pressure is going up a little bit. What do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing to remember is that predisposition does not mean inevitability. So if your mom and dad both had diabetes, that means that under certain circumstances, you're more likely to get diabetes, but it doesn't mean you will. You don't want to assume I'm just going to get it. Everybody else has it. I'll just deal with it, right? You want to do your best to take care of the components that lead to that predisposition becoming a reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So For diabetes and high blood pressure, it's very similar. And cholesterol, same too, just a few little minor differences. To avoid both, adopting all three, adopting a healthy dietary pattern that, like we just talked about, is essential. So it means preparing more of your own food at home so you have more control over what goes into that food. So that might be eating out less, or that might be eating fewer prepared packaged foods. But that doesn't mean cooking necessarily. So if you come home from work and you open a can of tuna and you have that and some whole grain crackers and a salad you poured out of a bag and maybe some grapes, it looks just like that plate, but you didn't have to cook it.
Right.
So absolving yourself from the responsibility of cooking is important if that is why you're eating out more or buying more processed foods.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So you want your plate to look like that picture, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to cook. It just means you want those components. It might be a couple of mozzarella cheese sticks for your protein and, a slice of whole grain bread with butter on it and some baby carrots and an apple with maybe a little peanut butter. So again, the idea is not to cook, but the idea is to have your plate look like that plate picture we just talked about. An increase of vegetables and fruits, a decrease of especially refined starches. That will help with both the reduction in refined starches and the emphasis on vegetables and lean protein will help with your blood sugar. And the increase in fruits and vegetables will help with your blood pressure. And getting enough calcium will help also with blood pressure and possibly with blood sugar. And then if you're picking lean meats, that will help with your cholesterol. So it's the same plate, but it takes care of all three issues, that's the whole, simplifying the process. You don't have to think. The only thing that I would add is watch your sodium intake because that helps with blood pressure. Right. But we're finding that excess sodium affects a lot of the body besides blood pressure. It seems to cause a problem with the immune system and is associated with other health issues. So watching your sodium intake is just smart.
Wow.
If you want to avoid poor health or want to improve your health if you already have some health issues. Adequate sleep. That doesn't just help with weight management. It helps lower your blood pressure and your blood sugar. And exercise. Exercise reduces blood sugar. I've seen this in a profound way. I used to work in a cardiac rehab facility. And if we had patients with diabetes, they checked their blood sugar before and after exercise. And we would see 100-point drops in blood sugar.
Whoa.
Just from 20 minutes of exercise. I've had patients, all they did was took a walk after every meal and their blood sugar improved like crazy. So, and that's because our muscles use the most blood sugar. And our leg muscles are our biggest muscles. So the more we move, the lower our blood sugar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Exercise also helps our arteries be more flexible, and a flexible artery can accommodate increases in blood volume without raising blood pressure. So if you think about it, if you have a hose that's got stiff walls and you turn water on, the pressure in that hose is going to go up if the hose can't expand to accommodate that extra pressure when you turn the water up. But if it's a flexible hose, it'll just get bigger, and instead of pressure going up, it stays the same. Does that make sense?
Wow, what a great way to explain that.
Yeah, so if your arteries are more flexible, your blood pressure automatically goes down.
Wow.
Yeah, and our kidneys regulate blood pressure by exchanging calcium and sodium and other minerals and potassium. So if we eat more fruits and vegetables, we get more potassium and our blood pressure goes down. If we consume enough calcium, our kidneys will use that to lower blood pressure. But if we consume too much sodium, our body will retain that and our fluid volume will go up and our blood pressure will go up. So again, it's the same diet. It's the same components, but you're eating all the things your body needs to help improve your health or prevent ill health, if that makes sense.
Right. And again, it's back to very simple things that people can do to change their patterns and not deprive themselves, not do something drastic, but to really just gain momentum over time by creating lifestyle changes that they not only get used to, but start to like. They like how they
Mm-hmm.
feel, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
attracted to healthier food over time because of what you talked about last week. So, guys, if you missed that episode, go back and listen to it because Michelle had some great stuff about the microbiome and how our gut dictates kind of what we're craving sometimes. So, that's just really amazing.
Well, also for avoiding ill health, stress management, again, lowers blood pressure and blood sugar because of
Right.
the way stress hormones affect those two things. So just to toss that into the ring as far as lifestyle factors that can prevent illness, reduce the effects of chronic illness. Stress management's a big part of that.
Exactly. All that deep breathing. It does some really big stuff. It's not woo woo. The science is here now to back it up. Right?
Yep. Yep. If you have cholesterol issues, besides everything we already talked about, including choosing leaner meats, which have reduced saturated fat, something interesting, it isn't the cholesterol in our diet that makes our cholesterol go up. It's actually saturated fat because our livers make their own cholesterol because it's important. It's a component of a lot of hormones and it's a structural component of all our cell walls. So cholesterol is important, but too much of the wrong type of cholesterol can clog arteries. And the thing that causes our liver to make too much of the wrong kind of cholesterol is saturated fat, which is animal fat, mostly. Animal fat and coconut and palm kernel oil. So reducing saturated fat by choosing lean meats and by substituting nuts for other types of animal fats or other high-calorie foods tends to lower cholesterol. Most of the research has been done on walnuts, but it does appear that most nuts are helpful in lowering cholesterol, especially if we use them to substitute for other less healthy foods.
Yeah, I heard about Brazilian walnuts, that people are eating more of those.
Whoever has the most budget, everybody knows oats are good for lowering cholesterol, but that's only because Quaker Oats has a good advertising budget. So there's something in oats called soluble fiber that helps lower cholesterol by the way it acts in our GI tract. But, there's also soluble fiber in rye and there's also soluble fiber in carrots and in most fruits, right? But you don't hear about that. You just hear about, oats and oatmeal and Cheerios as being ways to reduce cholesterol, just advertising budget. Soluble fiber is the thing that is helping to lower cholesterol in those foods.
Wow, that's good to know. One last question. I have a lot of clients with this, have a lot of GI issues because, I think it's definitely connected to, emotional health.
Absolutely.
What if someone has, tummy or GI issues? What dietary changes do you think they should make, especially for reflux?
Yeah, reflux is a pretty common problem. And as you said, stress hormones can directly affect the GI tract and lead to an upset stomach and stomach issues. Some people lose their appetite when they're stressed, but a lot of people want to eat more, eat the wrong things, and then couple that with stress hormones and their effect on the GI tract, and stress can really lead to stomach issues. So there's a lot of things, and they're sort of structural. So what you're thinking about is there's a little flap that at the bottom of your esophagus, which is the tube that the food goes down when you eat. And that flap is supposed to keep your stomach contents in your stomach because your stomach has a lining that protects it from stomach acid, but your esophagus doesn't.
Right.
And when that flap fails and food comes back up out of your stomach, it burns your esophagus, and that's what heartburn is. They call it heartburn because it hurts behind where you think your heart is. So what you're trying to do is change your habits to reduce pressure on your stomach and keep that flap strong. So far, so good?
Yep.
So you want to eat slowly and chew thoroughly so that your stomach doesn't have a lot of work to do. Okay. And so the food empties out of your stomach more quickly. So that's one thing. You do want to try to stop eating at least 3 hours before bedtime to give your stomach a chance to empty. Because when you lay down, gravity can cause a full stomach's contents to come back up. So stay upright at least 3 hours after meals. It can help to drink a beverage with meals. That helps kind of push the food through your stomach. It's really important to wear loose clothing. Besides the guy who ate on his stomach we talked about last time, I've had, several patients who they wore the belt too tight, or they wore tight pants around their stomach, and that pushed on their stomach on the outside, and that pushed stomach contents back up. So you want to wear loose clothing. That can really help. You want to make sure after a meal that if you have to pick something up off the floor, that you squat to pick it up. Don't bend forward, because when you bend forward, that puts pressure on your stomach. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's that simple.
Yeah. And then we know that our body does better. This is also a weight loss tip, and more evidence, pretty compelling, that we process calories better in the early part of the day. So for both stomach, I have seen, this is kind of the thing that leads to the biggest relief for people with current GI issues. That is, have a big breakfast and a big lunch and a very small dinner, if any dinner at all. That can also help with weight loss, because calorically, we burn calories better earlier in the day than we do later in the evening. So eating I don't know if you saw the Washington Post actually had an article about this, and it was actually talking about longevity, not weight. But, people who ate the most, people in cultures where they live the longest tend to eat this way. They eat medium to large breakfast, medium to large lunch, and either nothing the rest of the day or just a very small, light meal in the evening. If you're going to bed and your GI tract slows down in the evening. And so anything you eat in the evening is going to empty your stomach more slowly and possibly lead to more reflux issues. So practically speaking, the less you eat in the evening, the less likely you are to have this problem. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, great explanation for that. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're trying to reduce the pressure on the inside of your stomach and on the outside of your stomach. A couple other things. There are naturally occurring chemicals found in mint and in chocolate that make that flap looser. So they structurally reduce the integrity of that flap and make it more likely stomach contents will come back up. A high-fat meal will also empty out of your stomach more slowly. So you might find that, if you eat a hamburger and fries, you're going to be in a lot more pain afterwards because of the fat content of the food, making that food sit in your stomach much longer. So, reducing, having half the burger and half the fries and then the salad with that, or making sure if you're going to eat that meal, it's earlier rather than later in the day, will also help reduce the symptoms you might otherwise be having.
Wow, good to know. Okay, so there are some really simple things and clear things that people can do to be preventative.
Yeah.
For reflux especially.
Yeah, I mean, if you need an antacid, take it, but you don't want to take them forever if you can help it. And sometimes just making these structural changes can reduce your need for that antacid, because it is a medication. Medications all have side effects. So, if you can do it with some simple habit changes, or at least reduce your need, why not?
Exactly. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for giving us just so much great information once again.
You're very welcome.
Around, just really simplifying. We're so inundated with health information. And like you've explained to us both last week and this week, not all of it is to our benefit. And we can get clear and have a greater understanding of how things work, like how things work in your stomach and how things work in your kidneys and what happens when you sleep and what happens with that 7th hour of sleep, I think is really empowering information for all of us that we can, and again, we don't have to restrict ourselves so much or do anything crazy that's not sustainable. I mean, just like personal growth, if you don't see yourself sustaining that change, why do it?
Yeah. Yep. Make it match you, and you're more likely to follow through.
Exactly. And you can tweak it as you go. What I love about what you've been talking about is every day can be a better day, right? And you can have a crap day and eat crap food, and okay, tomorrow start back over, and it's okay. And it's the patterns. And just like with patterns of behavior in mental health and personal growth, patterns of behavior in our nutrition, and how we can be more mindful and take better care of ourselves.
Right. And understand that food choices they don't say anything about our character. They're often hardwired in something that we're not even aware of. And so,
Right.
we are gaining weight as a society because of our environment, not because we have some sort of personal flaws.
Exactly.
That's a whole nother podcast, but all the things that in our environment that have caused this wave of overweight in our country, it can't be genetic. It wouldn't happen that fast.
Right.
So, trying to overcome that is a huge challenge for all of us. And taking a step away from, certainly there are things you can do to help yourself, but blaming yourself and feeling bad about yourself won't help. Are a false way to look at it, because this wouldn't happen as a society so ubiquitously if it wasn't something about the society rather than about us as individuals.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah, that is a whole nother episode we're going to have to do soon. Because it is something I think everyone's talking about more. It's not just you talk about it, not just me, but I'm hearing more and more about it. And I think we are starting to care about that more. And I think that's really important. So how can folks work with you, Michelle, and how can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. So the best way to work with me is to go to healthprofs.com, HealthProfs.com. Type in my name in the search box, Michelle Buckingham, like the house, 2 L's for Michelle, and my name will pop right up, and then you'll be able to contact me. There's a phone number and there's an email address that comes directly to me. You can also go to Facebook. I have a Facebook business page. It's called Simple Steps Wellness. And you can contact me through that or just look through the things that I posted. There's some fun and interesting articles on nutrition and diet. And either way, you'll be able to reach me.
That's great. And I encourage you guys to check her out because she has done some amazing things over the years to help people get better. And again, she simplifies it. She takes all the shame and guilt out of it and all the fear and is a walking encyclopedia and can answer most of your questions because she's already researched it and learned it and crystallized the information,
Me and Google.
Yeah. So also, we're going to put those links, Michelle, that you mentioned, myplate.gov and all those in the show notes. So you guys can access those directly as well.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Well, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. And it's always exciting when I can reach more people than one at a time.
Right.
Because I think it's really important for people to know how to take care of themselves. And, then they can share that with their family and friends and the message can get out. So thank you for giving me a platform to do that.
Oh, it's a blessing to have you here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care. Well, thank you, Michelle, again, for more rich information that really helps us simplify how to eat better and stay healthier, not just physically, I think, but mentally as well. Explaining to us how many of the most popular diets and supplements can work and how we can help prevent the onset of diabetes and hypertension, which I think is a big deal for a lot of people. And it's important to empower ourselves with the right information so we can do things to help us live better and longer. Well, thank you for hanging out with us today. I hope it inspired you to get back on or stay on that wellness train like we talked about last week. Check out Michelle's resources, because over the years she has taught me so much and she can continue to teach you too. Pass this episode on to others who can benefit as well. I've put links in the show notes to the resources that she mentioned as well as Michelle's information. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together?
Oh, yeah.
Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.